And I think there are only items of correspondence, and I just wanted to highlight we do have one of our letter writers who has stayed here the whole meeting and may have some interest in speaking. So, motion to do that. Councillor King, I saw your hand first.
Certainly would like to hear from that letter writer. Also, number 15.2, I'd like to just briefly address.
Certainly. So resolution to, your motion would be to hear a speaker on 15.4 and have a brief discussion on 15.2?
Sure, okay.
Thank you. Seconder? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We're going to do this in the order that I heard. First was 15.4. So, Mr. Ryder, if you please. And 2 to 3 minutes, if you could, please.
Thank you. You have no idea how painful it's been to sit through the meeting when I get headache from being in a relatively high electromagnetic zone such as this. It did drop off at about 8 o'clock. But to give you an idea what the radiation is like, I think most of you know where I sit for coffee in the morning. When I go in there, the radiation is about 50 millivolts. If I decide to turn my laptop on Wi-Fi, it spikes to 9,000 millivolts. I did get spikes in here of 3,000 millivolts, just to give you an idea how much from essentially nothing it can jump. I start having problems when things are consistently over 500 millivolts. I'll have a headache until the wee hours of the morning. The problems with electromagnetic hypersensitivity are getting worse. More and more people are beginning to realize they have it, or there's probably at least someone in here now that's also got a headache they wouldn't like, and there's a whole bunch of other symptoms that are quite common. They figure 50% of the population will have it. By 2020, they'll have at least some symptoms of electromagnetic hypersensitivity. And with this increasing number of microcells, etc., that are going up, in the Shaw GoWifi, I find it, I have a problem walking on East Saanich between Wallace Drive and Mount Newton, that I can sometimes be literally staggering by the time I get to the end because of how bad the radiation is. That I would like an opportunity to, obviously can't say it all in 2 or 3 minutes, I would like to be able to meet with council, or if you wanted to do a tri-council meeting, I could bring in or arrange for video conferencing of some of the experts I'm in contact with around the world, such as a professor at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden, which is the top medical university in Europe, and they give out the Nobel Prize in medicine. So I mean, I'm dealing with a lot of very high-level people that if you can give 2 hours of your time, and it will take time for a special meeting, I think you'd be very surprised at what you can learn about not just the biological harm that electromagnetic radiation is doing, which is one discussion, and how it's affecting people like me with electromagnetic hypersensitivity. And I'm not extremely sensitive. A lot of people are much worse than me.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Mr. Ryder as well. And I'm sorry to hear of the pain that he's going through. And I've heard from Mr. Ryder over the numerous years with this concern. I appreciate his persistence in coming to council, as well as, I think, writing to the library board in the past. What I could say in terms of his request for a special meeting is somewhat similar to other residents that have asked for a special meeting, and I would simply suggest that he talk to staff about perhaps making a presentation as part of a delegation to council, but that we wouldn't necessarily have as far as I can see, a special separate meeting, but that he would be offered the same opportunity as anyone else, the Chamber of Commerce or others, if he wished to talk to staff about making a presentation as a delegation.
Thank you for your thoughts on that, Councillor King. Councillor Thompson.
What I heard, and the letter writer can clarify, he was talking about significantly longer than a 10-minute presentation. Yeah. One alternate is to look at hosting a meeting that is open to the public and inviting members of council, which would reduce, say, if you're talking 2 hours, that's in terms of staff time and so forth, that seems a lot to me. Perhaps a public meeting to which members of the public and members of council are invited would be an alternate consideration.
Thank you for that, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Graham?
I think given the medical nature of this condition, I think a presentation to the CRD Regional Health Board would make the most sense, and something for Mr. Ryder to consider.
Thank you. Those are all suggestions for which Mr. Ryder can consider. Is there anything further from Council? Councillor Thompson?
Well, one vehicle might be, for example, through the newly formed Central Saanich, I'm not sure the name, Community Association or whatever, is a body that may assist in hosting a presentation like this.
Thank you. Another suggestion. So you have some suggestions, Mr. Ryder?
Can I say the suggestion I would like would actually be a public meeting? That if you're happy with that, that works fine. That 2 hours just to talk to you people is a lot of effort for just a small group. A public meeting would be much nicer if everyone was happy with that. And who should I talk to on staff to see if we can get that organized?
I'll look to whoever suggested that idea. Councillor King?
I didn't suggest it, but I think that there are community associations like the Central Saanich Community Association. You'd speak to them if they were to perhaps host. There's in terms of council and a meeting sponsored by the district, as far as I can see, that would only fall, and I may be wrong, but under a delegation presentation at a council meeting, in which case Mr. Ryder would speak to staff about how to do that. I think that would be appropriate.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, did you want to speak
Well,
further to that?
my thought was that the value of doing a community or your own meeting or something in association with a community association is it gives you the broadest freedom in terms of setting an agenda, who you bring in as a speaker, etc. So that's part of the reason for doing it, rather than a council meeting per se.
Thank you. So it would be external to the organization. Thank you, Mr. Wright.